Okay, looks like we are live on Zoom and on Facebook. So this is the first time ever that I'm trying to do a simulcast, I guess, and be live on Facebook over at the Small Biz Thoughts page. So if you're not a member of Small Biz Thoughts, just look for Small Biz Thoughts on Facebook. You'll find that. And we're live streaming there. So I have to say, this is my first time, so I will put no further effort into that. So if something goes wrong on the live stream, we'll have to figure it out for next time. But I don't have a coordinator here in the office to assist. So if things go wrong, it is what it is. All righty then. So welcome, everybody. Folks are still logging in. I'm always gratified when I get a few hundred people, 250 people signed up for a webinar. With luck, we'll get 60 or 70% of them to actually show up. But in the meantime, welcome to the Small Biz Thoughts, Karl Palachuk's 10th Annual State of the Nation Address for SMB. And you know, this is one of these interesting things that happens is that you do something and then you do it again and you do it again and you do it again. And pretty soon, 5 years, 10 years have gone by, and it's kind of interesting how just persistency is sometimes all it takes to look back and say, wow, I did that for 10 years. With luck, it's successful, but at a minimum, it exists for 10 years. You know, the great line from Animal House is that the house has a long history of continued existence, right? So that's what the State of the Nation address has. So with all that, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Karl Palachuk. So for those of you who don't know me, I am the author of 18 books. Number 19 should be out very soon. And so, you know, I'm always working on focusing on the small biz community and IT consultants in particular in the small business community. So I would greatly appreciate it if you would connect with me on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, so forth and so on. You know, there's so many social media today, you can't actually be super active in all of them, but I'm happy to connect. I put most of my effort into LinkedIn and Facebook. So just so you know, if you want to ping me there. I don't use the messaging system on either one. So if you want to talk to my administrative assistants, by all means, send a message on Facebook or LinkedIn and somebody will read it, but it won't be me. My email is karlp@smallbizthoughts.com. So if you want to email me, you're welcome to do so. I started out in IT literally back at the University of Michigan in the 1980s. And loved it. And I always worked with computers and politics. And so eventually I took a job running a company that put political information online so that agencies and lobbyists and so forth could track legislation. And that got me into big iron, HP 3000s, and eventually into the worlds of Novell and NT and networking and all of that kind of stuff. So when Windows NT was invented, we decided to move that system to NT and SQL. And you know, a few years later, I realized, wow, I could make some money doing consulting. So I started my first IT consulting business, and from there, grew that to about 12 employees, sold that company, and then wrote a bunch of books, and then started another IT company, which I sold at the very beginning of last year. So about a year ago today, more or less. And so I've built and sold a couple of businesses, and I love this community. Somewhere along the line, I connected up with Harry Brailsford and a lot of the people who are running IT user groups all over the country, all over the world. And so that has been the growth of my, what I consider my community. Not that I own it, but I belong to it. And I love the IT pro community. You know, I go to any country, I go to any city, and I can find somebody who is willing to sit down and talk about their IT consulting business. And for me, that has just been a phenomenal source of information and inspiration. I meet people who make money in ways I never imagined. And I meet people who have the same challenges that I see again and again. And I am long enough into my career that I am happy to say I can now focus all of my attention on helping other people achieve what they want. And it is literally the goal of my business, both of my businesses and my personal life. It is my goal to help you be successful in your personal life and in your financial life and in your business. And so that's what motivates me. That's what gets me up in the morning. So when I hear people say, oh, I have to take this $300 a year client because I have to feed my family, I just want to help them. I want to help them understand that you will never be successful focusing on that market. And I want to help them understand, what it takes. And you're going to see as we go along today that everything loops back to your success. But that's not what we're here for specifically to start out with. A couple of housekeeping notes. Unmute your speakers. So if you're having issues, a lot of people calling, oh, I can't hear this and that. And they get on the phone with Kara and she tells them to unmute their speakers and a lot of problems go away. We don't have a chat feature. I think chat was invented by invading alien robots and is the most evil thing in the history of the world. Except for maybe Nazis. So I don't do chat, but I do have a Q&A panel, and so that's the place where you can put questions, and you can queue those up. I'll take questions at the end. Yes, this is being recorded, and so if you want to shout out to the world and use the hashtag SBT, I would appreciate that. So here are some of my brands. Those of you who have poked around in my businesses for a while know that I run about 200 websites in support of my businesses. And so these are the primary ones. Smallbizthoughts.com and smallbizthoughts.org are the primary sites. My bookstore is at SMB Books. When I do events out and about in the world, I call it the SMB Roadshow, and so we have a site for that. We have a series of 5-week classes every year at Great Little Seminar. Of course, I have my blogs for Relax, Focus, Succeed, and IT Consulting. We do a podcast at SMB Community Podcast. And I have a whole different business doing motivational trainings over at relaxfocussucceed.com. So memorize all that, take a screenshot, visit all those sites, and I would appreciate it. So today I want to talk a little bit about some announcements of what's going on. Every year I do kind of a summary of what we did in 2018 and what I think we're going to do in 2019, and then make a presentation of kind of my thoughts on the world at large. And I don't claim to be wise or a pundit or anything, but I do love working and living in this community. And so I want to give you my perspective on where we're going. So in 2018, I made presentations in 21 cities. What's interesting is that there's 40 presentations in 21 cities. Some of them were 2 presentations, one on one day, one on the next. Others were just going back to the same cities again and again. There's this weird cyclical nature to our business. I think I was in Anaheim 8 times in 2018. And I'm probably going to spend all in literally 3 or 4 weeks in Chicago in 2019. So, everybody moves around from time to time, but they tend to move to the same cities. Anyway, Managed Services in a Month, the actual paperback edition of the 3rd edition came out in 2018, as did the revised edition of Service Agreements, and a brand new book with my good friend Stephanie Chandler on nonfiction book publishing. Stephanie runs the nonfiction Authors Association. And so I was very honored to be able to put together a book with her. We did a new audiobook, the third edition of Managed Services in a Month, and also the German edition of Managed Services in a Month is now available. So for those of you from Germany, with luck, you'll give it a listen or give it a look and give me any feedback you have. We also produced 11 5-week courses. We had a couple of courses running at the same time. Wrote a bunch of blog posts, did a bunch of videos. I'm loving the video stuff. I used to hate video because I don't like learning that way, but I get a lot of positive feedback from it. And of course, did a lot of webinars and so forth. And between the various things I do, put out 66 newsletters. So if you are interested, I have a weekly newsletter. I would love to put you on that list. And it's at smallbizthoughts.com. We also did a road show, which I was trying to think of, which 4 or 5 cities did I go to? And I couldn't remember them all. So I looked them up, and it turns out I think we went to 9 cities. So I was surprised at how much of a road show we actually did, because I tried to downsize it. And then the biggest news is we launched the Small Biz Thoughts community, and that's a community filled with content. Our goal is we're eventually going to have every version of every book and every white paper and every checklist and everything that I've ever done is going to be in that community at a very reasonable price. So for 2019, I'm planning to do 5 shows. Channel Pro has added a show in Toronto, and so we're going to kick off with Atlanta and then go to Chicago, San Jose, Toronto, and then finish up in Newark in November. So I'm loving the Channel Pro stuff, and it is by far, in my opinion, the best reasonably priced small business event that you can go to. There are other events that will cost you many thousands of dollars to attend, and they have great content. But Channel Pro, in terms of actual, great attendees, great vendors, great interaction, it's the primary show that I love to do. And my brother and I are doing a really fun presentation this year. So if you can, go to Channel Pro and channelpronetwork.com and sign up for one of those. Also doing Tech Fest. Tech Fest is such a great event, and literally when I finish this broadcast today, I'm going to log off and rush to my car and drive to the airport so I can fly to Anaheim and make a presentation with my very good friend Dave Seibert tomorrow morning. So Tech Fest is always a good thing. And then we have 10 classes scheduled, including 2 brand new classes over at Great Little Seminar. The next one coming up is on service agreements. So it was a brand new class last year, so this is the second time it's ever been offered. It includes a free copy of my book on service agreements for SMB consultants. I'll give you a hint. I'll give away the ending. Service agreements have nothing to do with the service you deliver. They have to do with the relationship with your clients, and that's why you should have a service agreement with every single client that you have. And finally, in the Small Biz Thoughts community, we're going to put up so much stuff. We had been focusing on audio because it starts with an A, but we're moving to PDFs and Kindle stuff and checklists and just continuing to put more and more information into the community all the time. So if you want to know all the stuff that's going on, there are literally hundreds of things going on in the SMB IT community every year. Sign up for my newsletter, and I've got a weekly calendar that gets updated on a regular basis. Right now, that newsletter goes out to just under 12,000 people every week. So it's one of the bigger and most opened newsletters in the community. A lot of people are happy when they can send out an email and get a 3% open rate, and we get about a 20% open rate. And I just looked at the email from Monday, 18% click-through, which is just off the charts. So I think that's a sign that people actually read it and consume it and enjoy it. And finally, the big announcement for the year is that I am going to be releasing cloud services in a month. And if I'm really diligent and work hard, it'll be out by the end of March. So my goal is Q1. And again, it's going to be about the size and shape of managed services in a month, but obviously completely different content. And that is about 80% written, but you have no idea how hard it is to do that last little bit of a book. It's sort of, sometimes when you give birth to a book, it feels like you get to 99%, and then it takes just as much effort to get to 99.9, and then as much effort to get to 99.99. But I have a good team, so the design is already done. Yvonne is literally like waiting for me to start sending her chapters to lay out, and the cover is done. So anyway, so that's my goal in the next couple of months. So stay tuned for that. If you are a member of the Small Biz Thoughts community, you will receive the PDF version of that book as soon as it is available at no additional charge. So for 2019, we're going to do that book. I'm hoping to do at least one other book and maybe two. The problem with my head is that it's filled with books, and I need to take enough vacation days to get books written, but also take enough vacation days to relax so that my brain will relax and I can actually get the books written. One of those is a project that I'm pretty excited about, and I'm not ready to announce, but I think that a certain group, a subset of this community, will love the book that comes after Cloud Services in a month. We are not doing a roadshow this year. So last year, I had too many things going on at once, and so attendance was very low because my marketing was confusing. So just decided to push the reset button. I am going to do some community meetings for the Small Biz Thoughts community, and those are open to the public. So if you want to, you're certainly welcome to attend them and learn more about that. Check out my blog for details. But the actual roadshow where we do the same thing, all over the world, we're not doing that this year. So we'll have a handful of community meetings. But we already have Amy Babinchak and Amy Luby and Harry Brailsford and Manny Palachuk and Eric Simpson, and I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody, Amy Babinchak. We got a bunch of people lined up to help us with these community meetings, so I'm sure they will be great. And then, of course, we're doing 10 new classes over at Great Little Seminar. So that's all that. That's the PR message there. Now we're done, and there's no more advertising. So I do want to look, every year I look at the stock market. And I just want to make sure people are clear. This is not political, and it's also not financial advice. Last year, I started to write a blog series on, for people who hadn't figured out how to save money. Like, how can you just start by putting aside an extra $10,000 in the next year? And every time I wrote a blog post in that series, I got inundated with emails from financial advisors who told me that I am not authorized to give financial advice, that I don't know what I'm talking about, that I'm not licensed, and there are rules about this kind of thing, and blah, blah, blah. And the irony for me is that you know who those people are. You've heard their ads on the radio. If you've got $150,000 to invest, we'll give you a free hour of our time. You got $250 to invest, we will be happy to help you out. Well, that wasn't who I was talking to. I have to be honest, you got $250,000 in the stock market, you don't need their advice. You're doing just fine. You might have made some mistakes and you might have left some money on the table, but you know what? You're doing just fine. The average American retires with under $100,000. In fact, I think it's $83,000 to their name. And that's not enough to retire on. So anyway, I eventually gave up because I got tired of fighting them. But so let me just say, I don't know anything about any of this, except I have bought and sold businesses for myself and for other people. I have been investing in stock market and real estate and oil fields since the early 90s. And I am there's certain things that when you engage in certain financial activities, you have to prove that you are what is called a sophisticated investor, and I am. So all of this is just my opinion, and it's just my experience, and that's all there is to it. So let me just, that's the preface, blah, blah, blah. So this is what the Dow Jones Industrial Average did in 2018. So it was down a little bit for the year, and up and down, and it's hard to see without the context, but the volume, those little lines at the bottom, the volume was very high compared to what it has been in recent years. In 2016, when I gave this presentation, actually January of 2017, I said, we are overdue for a correction. It's just been going up and up and up, and it's, a correction is not a recession. And you have to remember that very distinctly, that a correction simply means the price of a bunch of stocks goes down a little bit, usually, more than 10% for a short period of time. And basically people take a bunch of money out of the stock market, and they take it out of the stocks that they don't think are doing well, and they put them into the stocks that they think are doing well. And then it continues on its way. So it does not mean that there's a recession. In fact, right now, just this week, there are reports about the financial sentiment of the people who follow the stocks and are the advisors. And overwhelmingly, their feelings are positive, that we might have unemployment go up 0.1% in 2019 and 0.1% in 2020. So they're very bullish on that. We are having some, issues going on right now with trade due to tariffs. That will get settled out. Stuff happens, and then we move on. So fundamentally, the economy is sound. People have money. They have a tiny bit more than they did before. There's going to be a tiny bit of inflation that will give them a tiny bit more money, and they're going to spend it. So, I believe that the economy is sound, and, we just happen at this minute to be recovering from a very, a decent correction. But remember, you have to keep everything in perspective. So this is the stock market going back to October of 2008, which is when literally the day the stock market crashed for the last big recession, which was the biggest recession in our lifetime, right? And I remember, I don't blame Harry Brailsford for this, but I was at SMB Nation 2008, and on Friday, I lost half of my daughter's education, her college, and on Monday, I lost the other half. So I remember that particular weekend very, very clearly. But when you put it in perspective, right, that's the going down to the bottom there, that it bottoms out in 2009. And then it goes up and down and up and down and up and down, but mostly up after that. And it is possible that we could test this correction a couple of times before we take off again. But remember, 10 years from now, you're just going to zoom out more, and it's going to look more or less just like this. And, I remember, I've got two rules for investing. The first one is any stock can drop 25% or more on any given day. And trust me, the same stock can go down 25% or more the next day. So on any day, any stock can do anything. And I actually remember the day that Xerox went down 25%. And in between 1999 and 2000, it went from $120 a share to $20 a share. It went down 83%. And it took a decade for them to recover, almost a decade. And, that was literally because of one specific decision, which is they would not adopt new technology. Canon came in and looked at the market and said, Xerox completely and 100% owns the photo reproduction market. How can we attack that. And they looked and they said, what's the biggest cause of support on a Xerox photocopy machine? And it was replacing the core parts, including the drum. And Canon said, that's fine. Let's create printers where the drum gets replaced when the toner gets replaced. Boom. Changed the market, changed the industry. And Xerox took forever, years and years and years to recover from that. So, don't fall in love with a specific stock, right? That's the advice there. The second rule I have is that when strangers at the bus stop are giving you advice on an investment, get out as quickly as you can. Those of you who remember the dot-com bubble, holy smokes. It was literally the case that strangers on the street were telling you, oh, you should buy Schwab, you should buy Cisco, And it was like, you could clearly see that was a bubble that was going to burst. But people didn't believe it because they were in the middle of it, right? And it happened again with real estate in 2006, 2007, 2008. Literally you had a case where, there were waiters in restaurants who owned 5 homes because they were super leveraged and nobody checked their income. And so they just bought and bought and bought. And so, the guy at the dry cleaners is given advice on buying real estate. I'm like, okay, I can see this coming right away. So just be aware, every bubble is eventually going to burst, right? It's just one of those things that happens. So having set the stage for all that, what's that got to do with our industry? Well, we are in a mergers and acquisition bubble. And in case you missed the news yesterday, AppRiver was bought by a company I never heard of, Zix, for $275 million yesterday. So that bodes well for, I'm not going to name the names because I do business with some of these companies, but there are other companies that essentially do the same thing as AppRiver. I talk about them in my presentations on cloud services. I talk about them in the book. They are ripe to be taken over. And in both on the vendor side and on the MSP side, we see valuations that are out of this world. I have seriously considered starting another business just so I can sell it because I didn't sell at the height of the market with the irrational valuations that are going on. So, but one of the problems with that is, and I've talked to several people who say, these other people, they come into town and they basically are marketing that, hey, we will give you managed services for 50% off. We'll give you managed services for $29 per user. They're trying to get market share and a list of users, a list of clients, and they are more interested in growing their valuation so they can be sold than they are in delivering service or in making actual profit at the end of the day. So they're not running their business in a logical manner, and that makes it very hard for you to compete. You also have the case, when you're on the receiving side of that, it's good. If you have a vendor who isn't interested in profit, they're only interested in market share, they will lower their prices, and that's all good for you. But at some point, that has to stop. Every time people say, oh, we're in a new economy, right? I remember people saying this again about the dot-com bubble. Oh, we're in a new economy. You don't have to make money anymore. You just have to get eyeballs. Well, that was stupid then, and it's stupid today, right? You do have to make money. At the end of the day, you have to make money. So you got to figure out how you personally, your business, is going to thrive in this environment. And you absolutely can, but you have to make sure that you're conscious of it and aware of what's going on. It's also the case that you need to focus on the things that will make your business successful. Now, if you just happen to be interested in figuring out what the value of your company is, Amy Babinchak and Rayan Buccianico run a company called sellmymsp.com. And so they have a little tool. I think they should gather your information, but they don't. You can just fill in the tool, fill in your company revenue and how much comes from managed services and so forth and so on. And it will pop out a ballpark number, a place to start thinking about it, about the value of your company. So it's worth knowing this. It's also worth being strategic about it. And we're going to talk a little bit about the strategy of the value of your business in a few minutes. So just be aware that we're in this market. And when you see all these things where people buying these businesses and so forth, I literally was talking to a coach, an IT business coach, not too long ago, less than a month ago, who said that he had just finished helping out with a company that, of course, he couldn't name and I can't name, that they got sold. And he said their multiple was far, far, far greater than there was any rational reason for it to be. And that, you just have to know, is not sustainable, right? Every time something like this happens, it is not sustainable. So the chickens, as they say, will come home to roost. But the good news is you are an economy of one. That's true for you. That's true for your business. So you don't have to worry very much about what's going on in your state and your region and the national economy or even the whole world. Most of the people on this call run a business with between 3 and 30 employees. Most of you are valued under $10 million. Most of you need a handful of really good clients to make 2019 a spectacular year. So focus on the next really spectacular client. Don't focus on the world, and don't focus on the nation, and don't focus on what's going on across the street. Focus on your business and you making a contact with one other business somebody who can be your next client, and then go focus on the next one and the next one. And in small business, that's where your value comes from. Go sign a contract with somebody who will become a client of yours for the next 5 or 10 years, right? When you look at the value of a client, you need to look at the lifetime value of a client. And that's one of the reasons why managed services and recurring revenue is so important. If you have people who walk in off the street and they want a $50 repair, there is no recurring revenue. They have no value. Over the course of the next 10 years, they will amount to 0.00001% of what you should be paying attention to, or the revenue that you get. So, look at finding just the right client. And that's why the people who say, I'm going to starve to death if I take Karl's advice to weed my client garden. Well, the truth is you won't. There's an old saying, it's just as easy to fall in love with a rich man as a poor man. Well, it's just as easy to fall in love with a rich client as it is with a poor client. Spend the effort you would have wasted trying to keep a $300 client. Spend that effort trying to get a client that will pay you $1,000 a month, right? And then go get another one of those and another one of those. And, if you focus your attention correctly, you can make money in any economy. And whether the economy is going up or down or sideways doesn't really matter. You need, in the bottom of the recession, there were people who were signing managed service contracts. All you need is one client at a time. Now, if you're a larger company and you're focused on growth, great. You need one client a month, or you need one client every 2 weeks. But, if you're into the slow growth mode, then you need one client a month or one client every 2 months. So, just focus on the next client and then go do that again and again. And, the problem is too many of us don't put any attention on getting new clients. And that's a whole different problem. So in terms of you being an economy of one, I'm reminded of, I went to the University of Michigan when Bo Schembechler was the coach. And he was all about the basics, right? He was all about the fundamentals. You ask Bo Schembechler, how do you win a football game? And he will tell you very clearly. You hit them hard, you hit them fast, you hit them low. And if they get up, you hit them again. Boom, that's it. Do that again and again and again, and you get to the Rose Bowl again and again and again. So for your company, the basics are, if you're worried about the economy, if you're worried about the environment, well, you should be, because it's a tough time to be in this business. Right now, the economy is going great, which means everybody you want to hire wants more money. They've worked for another managed service business before, and so you need to be professional enough to keep them as employees. Every client you go to knows what managed services is, or at least they have some vision in their head about what managed services is. That wasn't true 10 years ago. So you have to work to get good employees and retain good employees. The same thing is true with retaining good clients. And that absolutely does not mean that you need to lower your prices to keep clients. That's never the right strategy. Be there, help them out, improve their businesses, help them from a business perspective, not just a technical perspective. Help them guide themselves through this massively changing economy and all of the new technology, and you will be their best friend. That's how you keep good clients. And obviously, you need to pay attention to costs. One of the things that happens when companies make a bunch of money is they do bizarre things. I've known people who got venture capital money and literally bought a hotel in San Francisco, gutted the insides, and turned it into this glass walled, playground for their employees, none of which is related to making money in the industry that they're supposed to have, been making money in. So, you got to focus on costs, keep them under control, and you also need to grow at a pace that you can maintain. Just because the economy is going well doesn't mean that you should keep doubling and doubling and doubling in size. Many companies, it's a very common thing, they go out of business when they're in the middle of an expansion. And it's because they have leveraged all of their cash. And so when one little thing goes wrong, they go down the tubes. Don't let that happen to you. If you want to grow, great. Grow at a reasonable pace that you can maintain, right? If you haven't read Great by Choice by Jim Collins, go read it. Spectacular book, great audio book. But one of the lessons he has in there is about the 20-mile march. Don't double your business every 6 weeks, right? Double it at a pace that you can maintain for the next 5 years or 10 years. And at the end of the day, once the mergers and acquisition bubble bursts, which I think will happen in 2019, you will still retain the value of your business if your fundamentals are good. If you have clients that re-sign their contract every year, if you have a good solid base of recurring revenue, if you have your costs under control and you're running your business like a business instead of a playground. It's also important that you focus on the new technology. So many people have ignored the new technology, and it's creeping in all around us. 2019 will be the year that you had better be paying attention to Internet of Things and a lot of this new stuff. If nothing else, consider how and whether you should be investing in LED lighting and signage and all of these other things that are moving into your space, because someone is going to get all that money, and you have to decide whether you want it to be you or somebody else. And that also means that you need to tune up your skills. One of the sad things that happened in our industry, which I think is coming to an end, is that we spent, I think, 10 years not paying attention to the consulting side of consulting. People had so much success with things like Small Business Server that they just took the entire project and they said, rinse, repeat, ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk. I'm just going to do the exact same thing again and again and again and again, which worked for about 5 years, but it didn't work for the next 5 years, right? There's a point at which you can't keep doing the exact same thing. And by consulting, I mean sit down and talk to your clients. Have the quarterly roadmap meetings. Ask them, what's going on in your industry? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? Tell me about the technology of whatever it is, manufacturing, fencing, sod, roofing, whatever. Technology is exploding everywhere. Educate yourself so that you can help your clients, but have that business discussion. Where is your business going? And I will help you, whether you are hiring people or laying them off. I will help you get the appropriate use of your investment in technology. So one of the things that I've noticed is a huge change in our industry, that just literally going around the world and sitting in rooms and talking to people for the first time in a long, long time, there's a noticeable number of people who are younger. And of course, I'm an old man, so, but I mean, people who are in their 20s and 30s are in the audience. And it's been a while since we've seen that, and I'm grateful for it. But it's also the case, a lot of those people are just getting started, just trying to figure things out. There's a bunch of groups that have sprung up on Reddit and LinkedIn and Facebook where people are just trying to find their way. And, to be honest, if you can do something to engage those folks, tell them that they should be reading Amy Babinchak's blog. Tell them about Channel E2E. Tell them about Robin Robbins. Tell them about HTG. Tell them about ASCII and CompTIA and Channel Pro and, even Small Biz Thoughts, right? Engage them in the community, because there's this huge world that they don't know exists. They think they're computer consultants, but they're not. They use the term managed services. They have no idea what it means. So most of the companies that you talk to have some vision in their head about managed services. And today I would literally start a conversation with a prospect by saying, what do you think managed services is? Because not all of them know. And they may have a very skewed perception of it. So, if you think managed services is a beautiful thing the way I do, then you need to make sure that the prospects understand your vision of managed services. At this point, most technicians that you hire have some experience in RMM and PSA and so forth, but you need to make sure that they understand your way of doing things. If you haven't gone to this site, willrobotstakemyjob.com, I encourage you to go to it. Interestingly enough, if you saw my presentation a year ago, this number was at 3% a year ago for computer and information systems managers. So, it's still good. If you're on this call, your chances of going out of business because robots take your job is very slim. But the reason you need to go to that site is you need to put in your clients. Are your clients in industries that will disappear? If they are, then you need to go figure out some new clients, and you need to do it quickly, because all of this change is happening faster than most people are willing to admit. So, don't delay and don't be afraid of it, but by all means, do the research, educate yourself, know what's happening in your client's environment. Because if you have, let's say that you've got 2 or 3 different verticals where you put a lot of attention and they are literally going to disappear, you need to go find some verticals with people whose jobs will not disappear. So it's a critically important thing that you need to do, is understand the business that you need to be in the next 5 years. Again, I've talked to many people about my daughter, and I have this bet, and I know that her birthday's coming up in a few months, and she's going to say to me, you got 3 years left, because last year she said you only got 4 years left. We had a bet that, their driverless cars would be everywhere in 5 years. So we are just under 3 years into that, or 2 years into that. But I have no qualms about the fact that, clearly in the next 3 years, they're going to be everywhere. We see them all over in California, Northern California. There are now services available in Phoenix, services available, I think it's London and Paris, right? So it's happening. Right? Driverless cars are here, and that's going to have an effect on many, many things. Probably the biggest thing that's going to happen to us in terms of our core industry is the speed of internet connectivity in 2019. 5G is gradually and very slowly emerging, but slowly is a relative thing. 5G will be everywhere by the end of 2019. And that means you will have wireless connections going faster than the wires inside the walls. And so you're going to have a lot of networks that, we use wiring for this and we use wireless for that. You're going to have a lot of new services available. If you're not selling internet connectivity, this might be a spectacular time to get into that business. But also many, many technologies that have been coming for a long time, where basically the technology exists, but the infrastructure isn't ready for it. Well, the infrastructure is going to get upgraded this year. So the whole concept of things like networked managed switches and things where we send our packets out to the cloud to be filtered and then bring them back into our network. Well, that's just not feasible on a 10 meg line, but it's completely feasible over a super fast internet connection. So a core piece of your business is going to change, and this is going to be one of the watershed years, I believe, for the speed of the internet. We take turns improving memory, improving storage, improving processing speed, right? And this is going to be the year of the network. The other thing that's going to happen, you hear all this stuff about smart speakers. What's the most annoying ad on the radio? It's the ad that says, tell your smart speaker, hey, Alexa, tune in to Karl's podcast at smbcommunitypodcast.com, right? The goal is that they're trying to actually trigger your smart speaker. Well, the next trend is going to be a smart speaker with a camera and a smart refrigerator with a camera and a smart LED switch with a camera and every other thing. Every light bulb is going to become a camera. Mark my words, 1 year from now, you will have an extra 10 to 15 cameras in every business you support. And they'll be on the weirdest things you can imagine. It's just the next thing. It is what it is. Anyway, that's my belief. So mark that down if you don't believe me, and count the cameras 12 months from now. And there's also this massive explosion of LED. LED technologies like for screens and so forth. Again, it's one of those things that it existed for 20 years before it became practical. And it became practical simply because memory became cheap enough that we could put a tiny bit of memory behind every LED, and then we can synchronize the screen. Well, once that happens, now every LED has a little memory behind it, and these are smart electronic components. And that's going to change your life. And it's going to change it pretty soon. And I think, again, 2019 is one of those watershed years. I like to remind people that it's always the case, the future that you plan for is not the future you get to live. We plan, we meager human beings, we plan, I'm going to do this and this. And we've got this nice linear view of the world. I'm going to graduate. I'm going to get my degree. I'm going to have a couple of kids, get a job, buy a house, buy a car, buy another car, and then there's a point in the future where, I miraculously have $1 million in the bank and I retire. Boom. Right. That's our plan. But that's not the way the world works. Right. And so, the idea that everything you built is worthwhile is still valid. All your knowledge is still valid. That's absolutely true. But where you go from here changes all the time. And I'll just give you a real quick example. So these are 5-year increments, right? Which is why the numbers are weird. But, instead of 95, I go to 94. 1994, people in our industry were helping companies have their first internet connection, right? 1994 was the year that you could legally connect up to the internet without having to write an essay of why you needed to have access to these public resources. So, consulting exploded. People put in their networks for the first time. Novell ruled the world, right? 1999 was the whole Y2K rollover, and a lot of people had their first server. And, remember when 2000 came along? If you were alive back then, if you were in this industry, you might have known people who said, I'm not gonna learn Active Directory. It's just, it's too much, it's too confusing, it's too complicated. And guess what? Those people didn't learn Active Directory. They either washed out of the system, went and got jobs, or they retired, right? Because they were not willing to learn that one more technology. By 2004, December or November of 2003, Small Business Server 2003 came out, one of the greatest products ever invented for our industry. And we literally spent 5 years printing money. We just installed that thing again and again and again, and we brought not just a product, we brought connectivity, internet websites, databases, email. We brought lots of technology into small business. And, it was a beautiful thing. But again, in 2009, there were a whole bunch of people who said, oh man, I'm not going to learn the cloud. I'm not going to learn one more technology. And guess what happened? When the recession was over, those people who refused to go to the cloud, either they changed their mind and went to the cloud, or they retired, or they got bought out or bankrupt, or they just took a job somewhere. But they washed out of this industry because they were not willing to learn one more technology. 2014, it was all about BDRs replacing backups and moving more and more and more people to the cloud. And 2019, it's all about the cloud. I've been telling people for about a year and a half now, if your core business is building servers and putting them in people's offices, you are operating with a business model that no longer exists. Like, you are obsolete. You just have to come to the realization that business model no longer exists. And so the more you resist that, the more you become in that group where 5 years from now, we're going to look back and say, those people who refuse to accept the newer technology and the new way of doing things, moving to hosted services, they either retired or they took a job or they went out of business. And I think that's the way it is. Now, 5 years from now, my crystal ball is not that clear. But I can tell you this, the world is changing faster than it ever has. And we are absolutely going to have to embrace lots of new technologies, and we need to do things the new way. And so remember, you can't focus on the thing that got you here, because the thing that got you here is just going to keep you exactly here. If you want to move into the future, then you got to focus on the future. And, stop selling new stuff the old way. Stop selling cloud services as if it's break fix. So many people go out there and they, set up cloud services and they say, okay, now nothing ever breaks, so just make sure that your check doesn't bounce, and that's it. Boom, they're on their way. Well, that is leaving too much money on the table, but it's just the wrong way of doing business. The way that you should do business, to be honest, to be a good citizen of the business world, you should stick with those customers. You should give them a maintenance plan. Yes, a lot of stuff in the cloud won't break. That doesn't mean that the client doesn't need you for consulting, for advice, to be there to help them make good decisions about technology. At the end of the day, that's what we do. We help clients make good decisions about technology. And so that's where you need to focus your effort. So you need to sign that maintenance contract, even if it's for cloud services. You need to put together the bundle that when you put it together and your team manages it the right way, it never goes down. And that's awesome, but you still sign the maintenance agreement. And when you look to the future, remember, even if you're in your 20s, thanks for being here, when you go down that line of your linear plan for what's going to happen, there is a difference between retirement and just not working anymore. Some people actually retire, which is to say they go and take trips to the Bahamas or buy a boat or vacation with their grandchildren or take their family to Disneyland every year or whatever. They have an actual different lifestyle than they did when they were working. There's other people that they just stop working and they hope that they have enough money to scratch by for the next month and the next month and the next month. Don't be in that category. And that means you have to really plan your business life, the lifespan of your business and the end goal of your business. And you need to be intentional about it. But you can absolutely retire if you have a plan to make your business successful. So believe it or not, you didn't know there was going to be homework. There's homework for this State of the Nation address. And it's simply, I would like you to do this. Spend time every morning, 10, 15 minutes for the next month, and just answer these 3 questions. What's the single most important thing you need to stop doing in your business? What's the single most important thing you need to start doing in your business? And what's the single most important thing you need to do in your personal life before you die? And number 3 is the most important. If you don't know why you get up in the morning and why you do what you do, I'm sorry to tell you that your life has no meaning. And, you really need to put some attention on that. You really do need to have some reason that your business exists. If you're in a big business, if you work for Intel or Microsoft or HP, the goal of your job is to make money for somebody else. If you're in a small business, the reason your business exists is to fulfill your personal dreams and desires, right? It's to fulfill the desires of you and your family. And it should bring fulfillment to your life. If it's just a way to make money, gosh, there's so many ways to make money. There are people making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 doing almost anything you can imagine in the 21st century. And you don't have to work as hard as you do in a small business. So figure out what's important in your life and figure out how you can make your business act in a way that's consistent with that. Because that makes your life fulfilling. That makes your job fulfilling. That makes it worth getting up and going and doing this all again tomorrow. And I'll just leave you with one final note, one of my favorite quotes of all time. The future's already here. It's just not very evenly distributed. By William Gibson. This technology is everywhere. I mean, you can't miss it. When you glance around, you can't help but see the amazing changes in technology. And I often tell people, I wish I was 10 years old because there's more opportunity today than there has ever been in my lifetime. And it's just a matter of figuring out, amidst all this change, what are the 1 or 2 or 3 things I can do to catapult my business to the next level? Because you absolutely can, and probably more easily today than at any time in history. So with that, I will take a few questions. I don't have an hour to spare because I do have to get to the airport, but I will answer some questions if I can. Michael says that, Office Depot is getting into the managed service business. You know what? Here's what I say to that. I love it. Bring it on. Right? Because we heard the same thing from Staples. We heard the same thing from Best Buy. We've heard the same thing from Xerox and Microsoft, right? Everybody wants to get into the MSP business. But here's the deal. Your clients want to do business with a business that's about the same size they are. Your clients don't want to go to AT&T for managed services. They don't want to go to Home Depot or Office Depot, Home Depot for managed services. They don't want to go to Office Depot, right? Though what Office Depot is going to get, and I love the person who's in charge of this, I actually love her, but they're going to get walk-in customers who are not going to sign contracts, who are not going to rely on them, for all of their tech support. It's just the way that it is. Josh, no plans for 5G in Albuquerque. True enough. So that doesn't mean it won't happen eventually. So any input on moving current SMB server clients from their local physical server to a cloud? I have quite a few. Oh, Scott, man, have I got ideas about that. So first of all, you missed many opportunities to take my class on cloud services. So look for the book Cloud Services in a Month, but send me an email and I will point you to the classes that I offer on, or that I have recorded on cloud services. I also have one of my 5-week courses is on cloud services in a month. And it is offered July 2nd at greatlittleseminar.com. Thank you, Milton. Ken asks, will managed services as we currently know and understand it exist in 5 years or 10 years? Well, here's the deal. If fundamentally what you mean by managed services, what I mean by managed services is that we take responsibility for the maintenance of the operating system and software. We take responsibility for the maintenance of the client system. We use a PSA to manage our ticketing and our internal company, and we use an RMM to manage the client's sites, the client systems. Then my answer is absolutely yes. I think whatever name you call it, that is how tech support will be delivered from now on. I think there's going to be an endless supply of people who don't know what managed services is. They think that they are computer consultants, and they get into this business thinking they're computer consultants. And eventually they figure out that they have to have RMM tools, and they figure out that they have to have, network management tools, and they figure out they have to have a ticketing system. And so there's going to be a never-ending flow of people who come in, but eventually, at least for the next 10 years, it really is the way tech support simply will be delivered. The big piece that's missing in terms of them getting managed services is they have to understand that they also have to sign those ongoing maintenance contracts. Bert, do you have any books or articles on how a tech person should approach sales meetings with potential clients? Well, sales is not my big deal, right? So for that, I'm gonna refer you to Robin Robbins and her technology marketing boot camp and materials. They're also sales coaches and sales managers. I only know what I do, and so if you Google Karl Palachuk sales, you'll come up with the 3 or 4 resources. I have a very specific way that I do sales that most people are not patient enough to do and are not willing to do, but I like an extremely slow sales process. In fact, I think you could Google Karl slow sales process and you'll get the information on that. Or send me an email and I'll send you the links as soon as I can find them. Thank you, James. Skylar highly recommends my cloud services class. Thanks, Skylar. And Stephen's Alexa thanks you. Oh, yes, very good. So what are your thoughts on converting my MSP to an MSSP as a future path to growth? So I think we all have to become security providers. So if you mean like a master MSSP providing security services to other managed service providers, then I think that there's a good path for that. I think most of us need to just have security baked in, but I also think that there's a limit to how many people are willing to put in the time, effort, and education it takes to be like masters of security. And I think those people who do that, who go down that road, are going to be extremely successful. The need for security is only going to grow. Think about what I just said. LEDs are going to be everywhere. Every device is going to be listening to you, and it's going to be looking at you. Combine that with big data and, governments who have the resources to do anything they want. It's pretty amazing, right? And so being on the cutting edge of security is going to be an expensive venture that will pay massive dividends for those who choose to do it. Josh mentions that I might mention my good friend Gil Cargill also does sales training. And I don't know anything. I've heard of Sandler. I don't really know anything about them. So, but that's another name to throw out there. Will services like Microsoft's Intune fully replace more traditional RMM tools like Kaseya, SolarWinds? The short answer to that is no, not during my lifetime. The problem is systems, Microsoft's things like Intune work spectacular if you have 10,000 employees and 5,000 desktops in one location. But for small business, it's sort of like back, Amy and I were just talking about this the other day. Back in the day when we were taking exams for Windows 3.1, the exam was all about how do you deploy 1,000 desktops in an afternoon over a network, connection. Well, that's all good and useful for a Microsoft exam, but in the real world, when I'm going into an office that has 25 computers and I'm replacing 3 at a time, I'm just not going to use that system for installing those machines and setting them up, right? So in the same way, I just think Intune is great for larger environments, but when it takes as much effort to tune the Intune as it takes to actually, apply the fixes, well, in the small business world, I don't think that they can compete with SolarWinds or Continuum or any of the others. So Carl says, Sandler rocks. All righty then. So that's it. Thank you all very much. I will get this recording up and post a note on my blog of where you can find it. Thank you for being here, and thank you for allowing me into your businesses. I sincerely appreciate the fact that you take some interest in this and put a little faith in me. Thank you all, and I will see you in another year.